Matt is still connecting to audio here. I know he's going to try and jump in on the move here, so hopefully he'll be able to finish connecting here shortly. In the meantime, we can get in and start with approving some minutes. Oh, Matt, can you hear us now?
I'm here. I'm sorry.
No worries, no worries. Okay. So, first item up on the agenda for this evening is the approval of the minutes for the September 13th Finance Committee meeting. I had sent those out as one of the attachments that went out yesterday. Are there any questions or comments about the minutes from September the 13th? Otherwise, I would look for a motion to approve.
I'll motion to approve.
Motion for Bill.
Second.
Second for Matt. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, sounds good. So, okay. Then we'll jump into all things finance. So the first document that I would refer to here would basically just be the new business document for, here we go, finance business for the meeting today. I'm going to actually share over to that. Oh, it's asking me questions I don't need it to be asking. There we go. Okay.
Eric, I'm driving by right now. Can I wave hello?
Hi, Matt.
There we go. Okay. So finance updates. The first item on the agenda here is really 3 items, and it's basically an update on 3 things that have an impact on the levy process, as well as then going on into the budgeting. At most, they have a request for a recommendation, but none of them need a vote. And 2 of the 3 are basically just informational. The first one, and the one that doesn't, that actually requires potentially a little bit of decision on it, is the update on the fine revenue. So back in the before times, in March 2020, was decided that we would implement auto renewal, and that we would then monitor what happened with the fine revenue line after that implementation, which was scheduled for May 1st, 2020. And it was implemented on May 1st, 2020, but we weren't actually charging fines for quite some time after that, for the very simple reason that people didn't have the option of returning things. So things were just extended pretty much indefinitely. It wasn't really until the spring, April and May of 2021, that things had cleared up sufficiently for us to get really a good picture as far as the impact of auto renewal on our fine revenue. And as expected, it had a pretty significant impact. I included a document that had been prepared by Katie Horner, looking over the fine revenue over, say, the past 5 to 6 months, and we're down about, depending on the month, 80 to 65% month to month on fine revenue, on trend for a projected $2,750 in fine revenue this fiscal year. Ordinarily, we had been trending more 7,000 to 8,000 pre auto renewal. So, as expected, implementing auto renewal did indeed bring down that revenue line quite a lot, all on its own. Now that we have the picture in front of us, I would look to reopen and revisit the discussion on whether we are going to continue to levy fines. My recommendation is that we move towards becoming a fine-free library. It's a trend that's accelerated at public libraries over the last year. There were a lot of libraries that took the opportunity when they were not getting any fine revenue anyway over the pandemic year to go fine-free. And looking back at the notes that we had prepared and that had gone in front of the finance committee and the board back in March of 2020, we had estimated that we were spending, in terms of staff time and resources, as much as $6,000 or $7,000 per year on fine-related activities.
Could you give me that number again?
$6,000 to $7,000. So the reality here then is that thinking in terms of those numbers, they're the calculation wouldn't be as high by now, but we're increasingly looking at a sliding rule that's less and less favorable in terms of fines as a revenue source. It's increasingly not one where we're coming ahead based off of what we're putting in. Additionally, as cited at previous finance committee meetings and referenced in the previous research document that I had sent out, research has shown pretty conclusively, and we are seeing very definitively in the trends at our neighboring libraries that fines just aren't actually very effective in enforcing due dates, which still feels weird to me. It feels like that should be the other way around. But looking at the reality here, there's no denying that most of the libraries in the area have now gone fine-free, and they are not having problems getting things back at all. So, if it's not enforcing behavior, which doesn't appear to, be the case, it doesn't seem to be having any impact on that. If it's not an effective revenue source, then I recommend that we do what will, I think, be a very well-received decision by both the staff as well as the public. We are getting an increasing number of comments from folks as to when are you going to do this? I noticed that these other libraries are not charging fines. Will you be following suit? I actually have received just at the end of last week an email from a member of the community, a new member of the community, that included that amongst her list of helpful comments. So, in short, my
comment was to remove one of our helpful comments was to remove library fines.
Yep.
Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah. And we've been. It's
Interesting.
unusual only in that she put it into writing. Usually people mention it at the desk, but it's, we don't typically get them in writing. They just kind of tell us and leave it at that. But it has been coming up a lot. So my recommendation at this point isn't that we make a vote right now. I don't believe that we're positioned to do that. Changing the overdue fines requires a change to policy because it's included in that policy document that governs what the library does. So my recommendation this evening regarding fines is that the Finance Committee request we move forward with drafting a revision to policy that would reflect overdue fines not being charged, but that would still very much reflect lost and damage charges still being charged. And then that we would take steps as we have seen and have the opportunity to learn from other libraries that have already gone fine-free in terms of using it as an opportunity to encourage donations, as well as some of the tips and tricks that other libraries have used to procedurally make sure that things get returned in a good amount of time.
Eric, how do we handle, because you've got point 4 in there, encourage timely returns of materials? Like if someone's got a book out or something that is very popular and someone's just left it there and they don't bring it back, do we, if they come to take something else out, do we not let them take something else out till they return that? If the auto renewal is going on and nobody's looking for it, then people will then that's not a problem. It's when somebody's looking for something that's popular and it's not coming back.
The biggest step from what I've seen is that with going fine free, it's helpful to make the lost item notices more aggressive, so that instead of getting your item is overdue, you're getting charged 10 cents a day email after it's, say, a week. I forget exactly whether it's a week or 2 weeks overdue, probably at both. You would get pretty soon, probably about a week after it was overdue, a notice that, look, you're very shortly going to be charged the replacement cost of the item. And that since the fine revenue is gone, that those lost charges then move up to be sent out more aggressively.
Okay.
And then, of course, the follow through there. And again, part of why that works is I think that the reality is that generally what library fines are sent at, ours are at the 10 cents a day, which is pretty typical. It's not, if somebody's really minded to keep an item, for an extra week, 10 cents a day is not going to be a deterrent.
Right.
On the other hand, having to pay the replacement cost for an item is generally more of a deterrent. And it also really focuses in for the library on what's the critical thing for us, which is first and foremost, we want to get the items back.
Yeah.
We want to get it back in good condition.
Yeah, and more for the next person who's looking for that particular item.
Right. So my recommendation would be that the finance committee just at this point request that we take the next step, which is draft the revised policy and revised procedure, which would then come before the finance committee and the bylaw committee pending their approval. So it's not a final approval tonight. It's just taking the next step so that I can put in front of the committee here the next set of documents for discussion. Kathy.
Yes, could you please tell me what the policy is in Lake Forest, at Cook and Highwood?
I think my connection went unstable there a moment. You broke up on me. What was the question?
Can you tell me what the fine policy is in Lake Forest, at Cook Memorial, and at Highwood Public Library?
I would have to check on Highwood. Lake Forest and Cook Memorial are both fine free, as are Deerfield and Northbrook. My recollection was that Highwood still had some fines that they were charging. I think for they and for North Chicago, the challenge has been that proportionately the fine revenue makes up a larger percentage of their revenue.
Well, in my opinion, and I understand the philosophy, I appreciate the work put into it. I just have a problem with eliminating a revenue source. And I've had this since we first discussed this, probably 2 years ago or something. That's been my position. So I would probably abstain on a vote on this. I just cannot have good conscience deny an opportunity for revenue. Doesn't mean I won't change in the meantime. And it could actually just naturally decrease anyway and not be worthwhile, but I'd have to really see how we're spending $8,000 to pick up $8,000 in loose change. So I will abstain, whatever decision you guys make.
Okay. I looked at the budget. I think you only had $1,000 in there for fines for this year. So
I estimated very conservatively. Yeah.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, that's how I was trying to right size here. I was just scanning through the budget. So you're saying right now we're pacing for 2,750, and we only have 1,000 in the budget. And historically we've had 7 to 8. Did I paraphrase all that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. And then the $6,000 to $7,000 cost, is that labor cost? How are we getting to that number? Like the cost to administer
It
the fines?
is time spent contacting patrons and letting them know about fines, time spent interacting with patrons about fines. There's a little bit of a material cost in terms of, generally most of our notices are email at this point, thankfully. But for folks that go deeply into the red, they still will get a paper notice. So there's some cost there as well.
Got it. And then Bill kind of hit on a point in terms of ancillary metric, with the elimination or with the auto renewal, and then potentially with the to consider the elimination of fines, like, has that been impacting our latency or hold period for folks? Do we have any view on that? Would be number one. And then number two, the ancillary metric I'd have is, or question I'd have is the recovery of materials. Like if there is no fine structure, do we risk, or would we also want to increase like our loss allotment for books that get damaged or need to be replaced? My thought is, hey, if someone has no incentive to bring it back other than just common courtesy, does it sit on their shelf or get kicked around their house for a year?
Yeah. Well, that would, that again would be why we would be certain that we would continue charging the late fees, so that there is, that reason not to just take the item there. Though somewhat surprisingly to me, what's generally been found from most public libraries is that people just will generally bring things back and round about the time that they're due or before, and that the fines don't usually have much of an impact on it. That if they are going to be deterred in a big way by something punitive, that it's the late, not the late fees, but it's
Replacement.
the replacement cost. Yeah.
And how does that
That
work?
is
Just for my own
deterrent.
edification. So I didn't mean to talk over you. Is that there's some latency here on the line. Is there a cutoff period once someone's had something out for a year where they're discharged the cost, or how?
I am bringing it up here so that I've got it in front of me. So I'm pretty sure I remember exactly where it's at, but I want to be sure I remember it correctly.
While you're pulling that up, because my line of thinking is, for right now, if you renew twice, so you've got 3 essential checkout periods, that's already 9 weeks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But generally,
Almost.
the auto renewal keeps going until somebody's looking for that material up until that third renewal. Is that how that works, Eric?
You get 3.
Yeah. So basically,
3 renewals. Yeah.
Okay.
but you're not holding it up for anybody else if you're allowed to auto renew. Nobody's looking for that item. If it auto renews, nobody's looking for the item. When someone's looking for the item, then you have to return it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Got it.
It's not allowed to renew, whether auto or manually. It won't do it. It's 35 days. once something has been overdue for 35 days, it automatically is moved to lost.
Oh, okay, so that's a pretty short period of time. So I wouldn't
Yeah.
expect the elimination of fees to have anything on that, any impact on that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And then if
And,
somebody,
you know, I would say that that would be something that we should definitely look at as part of looking at what our fines and fees would be with the, you know, under a fine-free structure. That would be something that we would definitely, you know,
Right.
take a good look at. Bill, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
one last question. If somebody's got an item then that is now considered lost, and they come in now to the library to borrow something else, will they have to settle the lost item before they're allowed to take anything else out, or they're still allowed to take stuff out? Is there?
Isn't there a threshold?
Yeah,
a
there's
dollar
a fine
amount that-
threshold, $10. So
Oh,
once
okay.
once the charges on your account go over $10, your account's frozen.
Got it. Okay.
And because our digital resources actually authenticate through the library software, it also means that you're blocked on My Media Mall and Hoopla.
There you go.
Yeah.
Kudos to the integration. You have to pay to play
It's
if
a nice
you're
feature. I
overdue.
approve of that one.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Okay.
And you know, Kathy, I really appreciate and honor what you're saying, and it really cuts against me as well as far as, you know, how we approach finances and being as careful as we always try to be of our revenue and expenses. You know, unfortunately, we're running at the same time as the trivia night tonight. But I would love at a subsequent meeting to have Katie and Martha here to
Yeah,
talk
and
a
I've
bit
heard
about
Katie's explanation.
the
I
details.
recognize her, then
Yeah.
I recognize her, you know, expert opinion by all means. It goes against my grain. We battle this budget and it's that time of the year. So I encourage the committee to go ahead the way they think is best. And as I said, I'm not voting against it. I'm just going to abstain or pass, whatever the most appropriate Robert's rules of not voting is. So that's me.
Well,
We don't have
we're
to
not
make a
doing a
decision
vote.
tonight, right? We just,
Right.
No.
We don't have to decide on whether
Um,
we're going to recommend it or we're just going to.
We're just going to move it forward. For,
No, all I'm looking for tonight is just a statement from the committee that we'd like to continue the discussion to the next step, which would be taking a look at what a changed policy and procedure would look like.
Okay.
And then those would come before the finance committee again for discussion. And
Right.
those would be the things that would be voted on. So, you know, really at this point, it was just kind of making certain that, you know, if the committee was, you know, saying, well, this is not the time, we should absolutely not do, you know, look at this, doing this right now and say, okay, well, I'll save the time working on the policy. But it sounds like there's, you know, some interest there in moving to the next step and seeing some specifics in terms of the policy. So I'll work on some of those details and then, you know, we'll continue to discuss. Does that sound good?
okay.
Next two items that I've got for you are of the informational nature. The first is the capital reserve study. So basically what the capital reserve study is would be having a trained engineer out to look at the mechanical engineering and electrical aspects of the building and provide information on their condition, a probable budget and timeline for when they will need to be replaced. The Building and Grounds Committee met on November the 1st, reviewed the information, had a chance to talk to Sean Kelly of Engberg Anderson, who had provided the quote, and made a recommendation that we proceed forward with this. That was a conditional recommendation, however, conditional on approval happening on the finance side of things as well. So it's an expense that we want to make, but it depends on where it's going to fit within the budget and where that will happen most appropriately, because it's not a time sensitive expense. We aren't in a situation where we need to do this study, right away. We could expend the funds and have the study done this year if we have the funds, or we could look towards next fiscal year and do it then. And it's not going to make, in terms of the results, a substantial difference. So since the Building and Grounds Committee, I've had a chance to look over the finance numbers in greater detail. And my recommended decision at this point is I recommend not making a decision. So we've taken on some additional expenses already in the budget this year, a number of which haven't really played out and jumped into the budget fully yet. A lot of them related to the Stroh Reading Room, in the architectural design, in having a project manager on. And those were things that were time sensitive and I think important to do. For something that's not as time sensitive, my gut instinct on this is that we may have the funds to do this expense this fiscal year, but it's not at this vantage point a certainty. That being the case, I would recommend that we wait until the spring. And if we have the funds, if it looks like we have the funds to do it this fiscal year, then we go ahead and do it. Otherwise, from looking at it in February and March, that'll also be the tail end of budget season, and we can make sure that it's then budgeted for in the next fiscal year, if it doesn't look like we're going to be able to do it in the spring. So that would be my recommendation for this, that because of the budgetary considerations and not wanting to just pile new expenses onto the budget here, if we can do it in a bit more measured fashion.
Yeah, I think
we wait a few months.
I think that's a good idea. I think as we get closer to the end of this fiscal year, we'll know what money is going to go into the capital for future years, and we'll be able to make a call, a more educated call at that time. So I'm okay with that.
Does that sound good, Kathy, Matt?
Yes.
For me,
All right. And then last update before we jump into the business of levy itself is the update on staff salaries. So this was an item that was discussed with the Human Resources Committee on October the 28th. So to try and provide a 1-minute summary, we are finding ourselves in a situation where it just no longer became and feasible or advisable to continue to try and get ourselves to $15 an hour for our lowest paid staff members by 2023. With the staffing shortages that are going on nationwide and in the area, we're seeing a lot of businesses that have jumped to $15 an hour or higher for hiring purposes, a lot of bonuses being offered, and we were very much struggling to get responses to our applications. And coincident with running into that roadblock, we had also had a full-time employee that had retired, and that provided us with increased flexibility in terms of how we were allotting our salaries. So my proposal to the HR committee was that we make use of that flexibility to bootstrap up basically the bottom of our salary scale, which will address some of the salary issues that we're facing right now as we're looking to fill some positions. And it will also help us to iron out some of the salary challenges that we've been working with the last 2 years, where our usual salary pool has been taken up in a big way by needing to make big compliance-based salary increases to the bottom end of our scale, and has kind of drawn us away a bit from what we had really discussed and targeted doing, which was keying in on specific individuals, identifying a core of staff members that we wanted to be certain to retain, and being certain that we rewarded them for good performance, and guaranteed that we retained them. So I had included the doc that I put before the HR committee on that. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I would emphasize as well that it is in terms of the finances, it's a wash. We're not spending more or less than we had budgeted and been doing.
So Eric, with the increases that you're looking at, though, how many people that we have working would also need to be bumped up in addition to trying to attract new talent? And is that factored into your calculation when you're talking about that it would be a wash because of the retiree?
Yes, it is
Okay.
factored in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Eric, how many hours is Carol Carter now?
18.
I'm sorry,
18. 1-8.
18. And that's less than she was a year ago, is that correct? Or would,
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Was just trying to remember the date where she stepped down from the number she'd been at, which was this spring. So yes.
so then your full-time are 4 or 5?
I'm just going to bring up my salary spreadsheet here so that I've got it in front of me. Five. Or wait, missing Anna. 1. Six, including me.
So that's
So we
Eric,
would have
Michael,
one fewer.
Katie, Eliza, Jillian, and who am I leaving off?
Katie, Martha,
Eliza, Jillian, Eric,
Anna,
Anna, thank you.
because Anna had stepped into the position that Carol had vacated.
Gotcha.
So the other part of this, of course, is that it needs to work with staff responsibilities, and looking at opportunities at outsourcing as well as consolidating some responsibilities on staff here. That is also very much doable. That we've can do that as well, which is not a surprise. Lydia had been with us for many years, and often when you have someone that's been in a position for a lot of years, then it's not uncommon to have new opportunities that pop up when that position turns over, as far as gaining some efficiencies. And part of that as well is that Lindy had a very unique talent and skill set, where she was very interested in buildings while being a degreed librarian, and that is not at all a common thing from what I've seen. So we have been blessed to have Lindy with us for many, many years, but we're going to be coming at those responsibilities in terms of the facilities management from a bit of a different angle going forward, without having her skills with us. Okay.
just one last question, just to expand on
Fire away.
Kathy's. How many people categorized as library assistants will we have, and how many are library associates? Just
Okay. Library associate. We currently have 3 library associates,
Okay.
and would be looking to add one more. That would be the person who would be jumping in and taking on some of Lindy's technical services responsibilities in lieu of hiring another full-time person to join the staff. Assistance is going to be one. Looks like we have 8 assistants and 3 shelvers.
Okay.
The shelvers are pretty similar in terms of their category and how they are compensated and all of that.
Okay.
Or anything else?
Any other questions on the HR salary scale?
Nope.
Okay. Very quickly, one item that I didn't mention here, but that we'll be circling back around to that was discussed at the HR committee is looking to have an HR professional do an evaluation of some of our key HR documents. That's the salary scale as well as the job descriptions and some things like that. So that was discussed as well. It's not a short term or midterm, looking more towards if it happens, it will probably be next fiscal year. But since it would, when it happens, be a potential expense, I figured I would mention it very quickly here, but just in passing. And on that note, we can move forward.
Real question, does the village have any services that they use to do what you're looking for, job descriptions and documentation review? And then there's services like the Society of Human Resource Management, the SHRM people, they have compensation surveys. If we had somebody that belonged there, we could get access to those, but just.
Yeah. The firm that gets used most commonly in the North Shore here among libraries is HR Source. They provide a lot of HR materials and support for public libraries in the area. They have a contract through Rails to do that and to provide a lot of services free or at discount to the libraries in the area.
Okay.
That being said, I think it's always best practice not to just, go with one, just grab it and run. So that had occurred to me as well. I'm almost certain that the village does these kinds of studies on occasion. I'm pretty sure that I've seen them, when feedback has been, received at the HR committee meetings over at the village. So I do anticipate following up and seeing who they use and doing some research here to find out, what our other options are. Just because you may have the best option in front of you. HR Source might prove, and I think there's a pretty good chance that they will prove to be, in terms of fit and cost, our best option. But I always think you got to frame it a bit.
Yep.
Just make sure, do your work.
Yeah, thank you.
Eric, one last question from me, if you don't mind. It's off the topic, but I wasn't at the September meeting, so maybe I missed this and I apologize. Have we had our audit report?
We have just in the last couple of weeks, I got the audit report.
Okay, so I didn't miss it. I was trying to figure out where it was.
Nope, you haven't missed it.
Okay.
So that's actually going to be on the agenda for later this November at the board meeting, and Bettina will be joining us.
So it'll be at the library board meeting in November.
Yep.
Okay.
And I can send that out as well to the digital copy to the finance committee so that you guys will have a chance to see it in advance and ask any questions. If there's anything too weird on it, then we can always schedule a meeting, but it's pretty straightforward.
So Matt, you haven't seen an audit report.
I have
Bill,
not.
Bill, you have. So this will be good. All the current trustees then will have gone through the audit process, and the village finance manager will come to our meeting. It may be a little longer than usual and present this. And then I would lean on you two. There's been a lot of debate in the past. Should the audit report every year be a full board presentation, which is time consuming, or should it be a finance committee special meeting and then follow up? So that's something for Bill and Matt, if you guys could give that thought as you're listening to the presentation in November.
Okay. Noted.
I would say in terms of the presenters there, Bettina does a much better job with keeping within the time constraints.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
Susan did. Bless Susan. She did so many tremendous things for the
Susan
village
was
and for
fantastic,
the
yeah.
library. But you know, anytime she would come to the meeting, she seemed endlessly able to just go on about auditing details and Gatsby this and that, and you know, for over an hour, I think sometimes.
Those are the
So
meetings I recall.
bless her for being excited about public finance. Leave it at that.
She's the one.
All righty, thank you.
Okay, jump into then to the, make sure that I've got it open here, and apparently I don't. Not sure how I manage that. Oh, that's because it's too many file formats. Okay, discussion on the levy. So this is the item that we've got up for a vote. And in addition to this short document here, I included the multi-page document from Bettina where she breaks out the math and calculations for everything, some of the history, etc. So the shorter version from all of that is that Bettina has calculated the PTEL increase rate for the library as 1.794%, which would be a percentage increase that would be applied to the property tax levy from fiscal year 21-22, this current fiscal year. Applying that would result in a projected levy extension for 22-23 of $1,032,713. And to pull up real quick, so it's not on there. Our levy extension for this year was 1,014,510. So it's
I'm sorry, one more time.
18,000, about 18,200 in additional revenue.
18,200 is additional coming up, or we just the addition we just
If
had?
we go with a PTEL extension, that would be the additional revenue.
21,
Which makes
22.
sense. Yeah. If you have $1 million budget, and you're taking a 1.794. Okay.
Right.
Have we gotten? Do you know what the PTEL refers to, Matt?
Yeah. So we don't have to make a notice here because it's under 5%, but we kind of have that handshake agreement where, yeah, I'm with you. That was kind of interesting, if not arcane.
That's a good description. That's a very good description. Then I would, and speaking of the village there as well, I did attend the October 25th Finance Committee meeting over at the village, and they did vote to recommend a PTEL increase to the full village board. And it was not at all much of a debate, which, you know, Kathy, having been through a few of these, you know, you can join me in attesting that that's usually the case.
Yeah,
Usually when these things come up, the typical course has been that both the library and the village take the PTEL increase,
well, I don't
unless
think the
there's
village,
significant reason not to do something else.
They
I
didn't
don't
do it
think the
last.
village, I don't think the
Sorry.
village
They
did
did
last
not.
year.
They did not do it last year, though.
Right, right.
Yeah.
No. The village had some very specific concerns as far as the state of the local economy, as well as they had quite a few projects that they were not able to go forward with. Things that did not happen, expenses that they didn't need to make because of the pandemic year. And for those reasons, they held their levy where it was. And they had quite a discussion on that. And it was interesting. It was local governance in action. So we were and have been in a bit of a different situation financially and made a different decision. You know, we have different expenses. We're trying to rebuild our reserve. We don't have the village's ability to draw on loans and bonds if needed, you know, as a fallback option. So, you know, the other thing, jumping to the last two bullet points here, I did do a preliminary draft for the budget for fiscal year 22-23, projecting out what it looked like where most of our budget lines would be for next year based off of information that we currently have, including dropping in some expected you know, capital replacement projects. We've got a few chairs that need to be replaced, a few tables, things of that nature. You know, so a few things that need to be dropped in there budgetarily. And I had also obviously spent a lot of time working with the salary costs. Actually, another one of the benefits of the changing salaries is that will make the budgeting of those easier for the next fiscal year, since the you know the annual drive to try and adequately reward high performing staff and retain them, you know, while staying compliant with the changing minimum wage laws, had been putting us in a bit of a budgetary pinch with some of our staff salary metrics there. And I know early discussion, we had talked that that was maybe one we needed to take a look at and really be sure we factored into the levy discussion this year. But you know, with realigning the staff salaries as we are doing, that takes a lot of that pressure off. So all of that adds up to my recommendation that we take the PTEL increase. I don't see any reason why we would want to exceed that. There isn't a push to add additional funds beyond that. We do want to take an increase because we don't want to see our purchasing power decrease. That's certainly the CPI factor being one of the big things that's factored into that PTEL. So that's definitely consideration, particularly at the moment. And you know, we do have you know, always every year increases in expenses in a few places that will always need to be covered. So that is my recommendation. Are there any questions, comments?
No, I'm
What
in
is
agreement.
our timetable on the budget?
For the budget versus the levy?
Yeah, the budget.
Okay.
We usually have a draft ready around now.
Yes. In October, November, I do a preliminary draft of the budget. And then the first finance committee meeting to discuss that is usually mid-December.
Okay.
And then the first full board viewing of the budget draft is usually the January meeting. And then the final gets approved usually February or March, depending on how many moving items there are usually in the budget. By which I mean, sometimes we're waiting to get bids on things to see what they're going to cost when we make the expense next year, things like that.
Thanks.
And I can and probably should send out the, I have a Word doc that has the summary of all that. I can send that out. Bill, were you going to jump in with a question?
No, I was just agreeing. I'm in total agreement that we take the increase.
Absolutely.
Does that sound good, Matt?
Yep.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
appreciate your recommendations and thoroughness.
Well, working with taxpayer money, taxpayer trust, I figure you've got to be sure we do our due diligence.
Eric, do you need a motion from us tonight?
I do need a motion.
Oh,
So
right.
this will be the one we need a motion on, and then we'll do a roll call vote because it's related to funds. So
Motion to approve the PTEL levy increase
I think
extension
we should mention the amount, the
of,
percent.
okay, so I'll motion to improve the PTEL levy extension an increase of 1.794% for
I
fiscal year
second.
22-23.
Sorry. That's a good
Motion.
that's important.
motion from Matt, second from Kathy.
I second.
Trustee Hayes,
Aye.
Trustee Meierhoff,
Aye.
Trustee Zaute.
Aye.
Levy carries. It will be forwarded to the library board and will show up on the agenda for the November meeting. All right. I think that takes us through everything that we've got this evening in terms of business that's listed on the agenda. Do we have any other items that anybody would like to bring before the committee for consideration tonight?
One, Eric, sorry. It has to do with that state grant. You and I've talked about it. We really need to be putting together all our numbers in the last 20 months and seeing what it adds up to and presenting it to the state. And I think we have to get really noisy about that. I don't know what this infrastructure bill does, but it might help our cause, and we have to be in the queue. So,
when I was reading about that, when that passed on Friday, I did think to myself, I think I should write a letter to Brad Schneider.
get
Yep.
him going on this.
Yeah.
Just let
Go for a
him know
bike
that
ride
we're
with him.
here, and
Yeah.
because that's it is quite a bit of money that's going to be going to a lot of infrastructure. And obviously there's a lot of things in there that are pretty roads and things of bridges and things of that nature that are pretty locked in that aren't really going to apply to us. But there are other things in terms of grants and funds that are going to be available that will.
We're supposed to be getting state money, so but the state didn't have any money. So if they're going to get something in another source, they may open this up.
Yes.
And weren't they supposed to be selling marijuana to give us our money? Isn't that what the whole thing was happening?
Well, they have been, and from everything I've been reading, the sales have been very good.
Oh, marijuana sales are very high, pun intended.
Yeah.
That's incredible. It's like,
waiting for that for a long time.
yeah, it's like, it's an easy one to lay up. It's like
No.
$40 billion. I mean, where
Well,
people have this,
Show us 100,000 or something.
right?
So,
No, if
Yeah.
it would probably be, if anybody ever audited our staff discussions on that would probably be an item of interest. Why are these folks so interested in marijuana sales? And that's the reason why, was that, once we received the grant, we were all, here on staff abundantly aware that there was a connection between these funds we were going to be getting and those sales. So periodically, in our general Slack channel, somebody will just share like, oh, look where the marijuana sales were this month. That cash is coming.
Well, let's get them down to our.
You're trying to get in front of this audit, I see, Eric.
Yeah.
Any question? Well, if you drive down 41, they certainly have money for billboard expenses. I think every other
That's true.
billboard all the way to Gurnee is marijuana.
Yeah.
Look,
And I've noticed too that there have been the signage showing up on the highways over the border too.
That's
That
all right, yeah.
there's signs that have been popping up from Illinois and Michigan
oh,
in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
About the fun things that you can now do over the border.
be just fireworks. Alrighty, anything else here?
I haven't got anything else for tonight.
Okay.
Not hearing anything else added for the agenda, then I would look for a motion to adjourn.
I'll give a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excellent. Meeting is adjourned at 8:02 p.m.
Great.
Thank you,
All
gentlemen.
right.
Okay. Thank you very
Thank
much.
everyone.
Thank
Good
you.
to see you.
All right, see you next week.
Have a good night.